Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire. Everything's on fire.
Heat Seekers, welcome back. I know you may not know who we are. It's been so long. But we're back. We are going to get you ready for your playoff pushes. We've got lots of IDP goodness to bestow upon your ears and eyeballs as you see us. Thank you guys for joining us as always on the IDP Heat Seeker Show. Coming up soon, the season will be over and we'll back to actually be a live stream. But right now we're still not live. So you will be seeing this probably on Friday morning, midday. But we thank you guys for hanging out with us either way. If you are listening to us in your eardrums, make sure you do the subscribing and giving us rates and reviews and do all those things so we can pander for your appreciation and approval. But either way, I'm back with the usual suspects. We got Sam Little to the left. We got Kraig Reed to the right. How are you guys doing tonight?
Excellent. It's almost Friday. We're here. Made it through another week of hell.
We're here. We're here. Kraig, how's it going, sir?
I'm ready for bed, but I'm here before bed.
I'm about to say, you stayed awake.
We'll see how it goes.
Stayed awake.
Yep.
It'll be fun. We'll see what we can do to keep Kraig on his toes as he's trying to wind down and get to sleep here. So with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about guys that are performing, underperforming. We're just kind of let the conversation go fluid as it goes. We're just going to kind of banter about these guys. So hang with us. We'll give you some guys that'll help you on your pushes as you're making a run for the championship. Although I do want to comment. So right now it's currently Thursday night. We're watching. Well, I'm watching Arizona and Seattle, and I think Arizona's going to be the blueprint for how you want to change your defense in the future. Like, I just watched them. They put athletes on the field, and they're saying, listen, go make plays. Like, I'm excited for the 2021 rookie class, and shameless plug, we are doing IDP rookie evals this year, so you guys will have some great content from us. We're working on getting it together now. But I'm just watching these athletes just kind of get all over the field, and Seattle's still moving the ball on them, but I think the NFL is going to kind of move in that direction sooner rather than later. Watching Seattle's slow defense not be able to catch Kyler Murray is pretty hilarious. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think Arizona's crazy for just doing something like that? And I'll let Paul go first because I saw him shaking his head.
Oh no. It's interesting. It's basically what the Chargers had a couple seasons ago when it became famous or whatever, versus Jackson. They're just running more safeties out on the field, and for sake of this argument, I'll call Isaiah Simmons a safety. He's just a fast athlete, but I like the fact that they're playing Simmons. They're somewhat forced into it, but he looks like what we thought he would. It's just they're early in the year. They had the veteran deference, which I understand. It's going to be an odd year with COVID, and who knows the scheme and how much of it.
Right.
And okay, he's now seeing the field, so we look smarter. It was hard there for a couple weeks when he didn't see the field, but
yeah,
I think it shows that they want to put talent on the
yeah.
field.
It's interesting. It'll be fun to watch to see how this develops, because I would love to see them go get somebody else to put in the middle with Simmons that has that similar range. So there's quite a few guys coming out in this draft that have that type of potential that could be fun in this defense to watch. But I don't know. What's your take on all that, Mr. Kraig?
Yeah, I think Paul's point is kind of spot on, that some of the stuff they were forced into, once Chandler Jones went down, they had to find someone else. And Reddick, who's just a better athlete, if you're looking for just athlete plays, is he a better pure pass rusher? Probably not, because Chandler Jones can do that outside linebacker defensive end role, and Reddick is more just of an outside linebacker. They had to put him out there, and he's playing really well for him. Simmons is playing well. And then your secondary, you have a whole bunch of athletes back there still. So it's kind of like, if this is where it goes, it's kind of like they took a page from the NBA, really, because you're starting to see, 10 years ago, teams started doing this where, like, we want length. We want guys that can shoot and that can defend. just go out there and get at it, you know. And it seems simple, but when you have a whole bunch of guys that are 6'7" with a 7-foot wingspan or something like that, it makes things a lot easier for you. So it'll never be truly like that because, you know, you're not going to have defensive tackles going back there playing safety or something. But when you have guys that can switch between linebacker and even D-tackle on some of these matchups with other teams, it's interesting to watch. And like you said, they've had success, so we'll see how it plays out for other teams because we know the NFL, if a team finds success, people are going to copy them.
It's a copycat league, and you know, and I think we're starting to see, you know, some fruits of their labors. I mean, every team in the NFC West right now, outside of San Fran, is 6-3, and San Fran, I mean, without all the injuries, they're, you know, just in the hunt as well. So this is a fun division to watch for the future, but we'll see what happens. So, Paul, seeing as you've been the most prepared tonight for the show, I'll let you lead us off. Who do you want to talk about?
These are essentially guys who are hitting, and they might be free for you. They might be hitting, and they're expensive. But we'll hit on guys who are seeing snaps share, and yeah, we'll go from there. I'll start off with a couple Giants safeties. Early in the year, we were a little unsure about Logan Ryan, and it's showing that he plays all over the field, all sorts of snaps. They don't have the rest of the athletes like Cardinals have, but he's on the field almost 100% of snaps. On the other side, it's nice seeing that Pepper's injury isn't affecting him, and he's despite missing, how many games did he not play? 4 or 5, I want to say. Well, it's not that he didn't play, but he played
Poorly.
partial snaps in 4, and he's up to safety 10 on the year, despite rough injury start there. But he's what we were hoping for at the start of the year.
Yeah, he only missed one actual game, but really, you know, the first 6 weeks of the season, he was struggling with injuries and things like that. But he's really come on the last month. I mean, averaging, was it 15, 16 points a week, basically. You know, had a few over 20. I mean, it's big for him right now.
It's what you're looking for. The floor on those athletes are pretty safe. A couple of the other ones, a couple of the rookies that I was higher on at the start of the year, Ashton Davis, the Jets are finally figuring out that they're out of it, and they have to actually have him see the field. And the other one is Kyle Duggar. Same thing. I know he played 100% of snaps last week. I don't remember who got hurt so that he saw those, but they're both seeing the field. And if you're in a dynasty league, there's someone I would look at. Maybe if you were out of it. I'm not saying if you're not in the hunt, you can't have him in there for a spot, but I'd rather have him on a 3-6 team or a 3-7 now, but versus 7-3. But it's showing that they're going to see the field, and it's showing that the talent that they have translates over. What were your thoughts on those guys?
I'll let you go first, Kraig.
Yeah, I mean, Peppers, I think, is a guy that you're probably not going to find cheap anywhere because he's probably owned, and the owner, if they're hung on to him this long, they're seeing the fruits of what they paid for him probably. So he's probably someone you're going to have to still pay close to what you'd have to pay for this offseason for. The buy low time on him is probably passed, unfortunately, if that's what you're looking for. Ryan's probably cheaper just because, again, you know, he's a stopgap there, but he's putting up points. So, you know, a contender's going to keep him, but he's going to be cheaper for a team that's not contending this year, that's selling, if you're looking to get one of them. And, you know, with the rookies, Davis is probably the cheaper of the two because he didn't have that sort of post-NFL draft, pre-rookie draft hype with where he went and how everything was playing out because Adams was still there. And he's not performing any differently really than Duggar as far as points wise, because they're not doing a whole lot right now. But you can probably get Davis cheaper than Duggar if you're looking at either one of them long term.
Yeah, and just even to add to that, the rookies that aren't going crazy right now seem to be more attainable. In one of the leagues we're all in together, I just got myself a share of Kenneth Murray, which if you hadn't drafted him, he was expensive after the draft, but all of a sudden now guys that are contending that want to add some pieces are willing to move guys. So, I was able to snatch up a share of a rookie that, I moderately like. I think he could develop into something, at least something for my team. So, I would say most rookies that aren't producing really at a high level are probably attainable, or potentially attainable, especially if the guy's on a contending roster. So, and those guys are all guys that I like. I mean, there's a lot of safeties when you look at kind of the safety rankings, guys that are surprising up there. Peppers, we've talked about, we've kind of banged the table for him for a while, at least as long as I know we've all been on the show together, because I know Paul and I have been big Peppers guys. And, Kraig just comes along for the ride sometimes and doesn't rock the boat. But, when you look at kind of the rankings right now where guys are at, I mean, Chuck Clark is a name. I don't remember which one of you, but I know one of you guys mentioned Chuck Clark. He's performing pretty well. A guy that none of us have really talked about, Jordan Whitehead from Tampa Bay, has really been producing well. I think he's back end safety 1 right now. I think he's like 12 or 13. He's right there on the cusp. Rodney McLeod from Philly. There's quite a few safeties that are producing moderately well, which we didn't expect. And some of it's injuries, some of it's the situation, some of it's the player actually is finally getting a chance and he doesn't suck. I mean, there's a little bit of all that in there. So those are all good names, all guys that I think you could go after. Peppers is going to be the most expensive of all the ones that you mentioned, but even that, I don't. If the guy knows IDP that owns him, then he's going to be expensive. If the guy the thing I've been noticing here lately is a lot of the IDP leagues I'm in, and and even like the positionless one we do together. I don't know how many people really know IDP strongly. Obviously we've seen some trades, and I may even have been a beneficiary of some trades where IDP guys are getting overpaid for. Maybe it just seems like people aren't so sure on it. So depending on your league, you might be able to still get Peppers at a fair price. He's still young enough that even if you pay a higher price for him, you're still going to get a few more good years out of him. The Giants can't stay a dumpster fire forever. And if they add some pieces around him, I think that would be very good. So, Kraig, why don't we go over to you and let you grab a few names now?
Yeah, going with DBs, I mean, I went with some lower name guys for this year. One of them just came on because of injuries, but he's been performing well. Cameron Curl over in Washington's been really putting up points, and we've talked about their linebackers, which seem to be sorted out, but their safeties are still getting nice points there. He's someone you could still conceivably get free off a waiver somewhere. And then a name that we didn't talk about at all, that is up there in the rankings this year for safeties that I don't think just based off of the name people are going to have that much attachment to. Daniel Sorensen of the Chiefs is doing really well, sort of out of nowhere this year. And you see that, with some of the guys we talked about at the top. You're seeing a guy like Adrian Phillips that they got off of, free agency late in the year, and he's, a top 25 guy this year for the Patriots. And he's not putting up a ton of points, but he's sort of playing that safety linebacker hybrid role that we kind of alluded to at the start of the show that you're seeing a lot more of. And you're even seeing some guys with the Panthers. Chin got it. There's another guy, Sam Franklin, has it. He played well when Chin was out. So, Rodney McLeod, you had mentioned, a guy that the name of, but you wouldn't be expecting to be a top 20 guy this year. He's playing well. So there's a lot of names that aren't people you'd necessarily think of as a top guy this year that you could probably get for relatively cheap, because I think people do hang on to, especially those that don't know as deeper of leagues, they tend to hang on to those big names more, and they're more willing to give up the guys that they may not have heard of very much of, if at all, up until 5-6 weeks ago or something. So those are the few DBs that I had.
Curl is a guy that I would definitely be trying to snatch up. he was drafted by this coaching staff in the 7th round, and obviously he developed quickly enough that they liked him, that they threw him in, and he's playing out of his mind. The last 2 games, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 3 and 5 assists each, respective game, and then a sack each game. Like, he's a big kid, 6'2", over 200 pounds. He appears to be able to get kind of all over the field. Not somebody that I reviewed going into 2020. And then when he was drafted in the 7th round, that made me even less interested in paying attention to who he was. But he's kind of shot up and really started to produce. And yeah, of the names that you mentioned, he's one that I have tried to pick up in a few spots, kind of stash him to see what happens. Because this coaching staff drafted him, I think there's something there that you could sit on for a while and see. I don't know if you're a contender. I'm not sure I'm trusting him in my lineup just because he had 2 good weeks. I tend to take the Craig Reith approach. You got to prove it for a little bit longer than just 2 games. So we'll go from there. But Paul, what are you thinking on those guys?
Curl, he's only really seeing the field because Collins is hurt. If he's, and I'm not 100% familiar with what his contract is, but I know he's expensive. If they decide they don't want him for cap reasons, someone's seeing the field there, and they're going to be bad for what, 2-3 more seasons.
Potentially.
Maybe they get lucky. Actually, as we spoke, I added him in XFL as we just said that. So, but I'm
You're
not
welcome.
a threat in that league. And I'm sorry, who was the other name that you mentioned there?
Sorensen was the other.
Sorensen. Sorensen's someone you can get for probably a 4th, and maybe you get finagled into a 5th also. He's just not someone who's been this high up here before, and I don't know if I see it in the future, but for the next 6-7 weeks, sure, I'll plug him in there. He's seeing like all the snaps, and he's getting high tackle numbers, so no problem with him.
And just to update the Landon Collins contract for you, over the cap's got it at 18, almost 19 million dead money in 2021, 9.6, 5.4, 1.2. So really, after 2021, if you really don't want Landon Collins, they could get rid of him. But I doubt it. I mean, even at 9.6, they'll probably still keep him because he's only 28 in 2022. I mean, so really, they could keep the way that his contract looks. His cap numbers 14 this year, 17, 16, 17, 15. I don't know. There would have to be I mean, this defense is so strong that there would have to be a good reason for me to want to move on from somebody like Collins. Not to get too deep into the weeds, but Washington's defense is just really good. I mean, they could spend their entire next draft on offense, and they probably should, because the defense is young enough and good enough that they could bolster their linebacking group. But John Bostic is suitable for them, so it's not like they're in a terrible spot at linebacker. But that's the only area I would look to improve. No.
Yeah, they need some speed up the middle, because even Holcomb, who's now seeing almost 100% of snaps, he's not the fastest. They do need someone else, but not in the first round, obviously. No. I mean, obviously, once you're beyond the first round, you start seeing who's available and all that stuff. But they could use a linebacker, that's everyone in the league, besides Cardinals. That's everyone in the league.
Right, for sure. So, there you go. There's that. Paul, we'll go back to you. What else you got?
All right. This is almost the we were wrong segment, and we're seeing interesting splits out of these guys here. The first name I'm going to throw out is Romeo Okwara. The second name is, position is the Bears backers, Roquan Smith and Trevathan, and the third one is going to be Robert Spillane and also Avery Williamson. We somewhat saw Flowers being all right for Detroit, but all three of us have our hands down if we saw this out of Okwara. He's showing it week in, week out. We completely missed. Before the season, we all said that Trevathan was someone that we would target for redraft leagues. We did not see the split being. I think Trevathan had like 60 something fantasy points in our main scoring format, and Smith was at 140. No one saw that split coming. And Spillane seeing lots of snaps here moving forward. It'll be interesting to see when the split opens for Avery Williamson. Almost like the split in Lizzie Borden's father's head when she cut him open. That's your one per show.
I already gave you the one per show earlier when I called you Samuel Little.
Oh, I didn't miss that.
Oh, I definitely, as the Detroit guy on the team, Okwara is playing probably some of the best football I've ever seen out of a defensive end. If you would have said that his brother put up these numbers, I would have said, yep, I could see that. Not Romeo. Like, it's almost like Romeo's brother came to town, he wanted to impress him or something. I mean, he's had 5 games with at least a sack. You know, he's 6 games where he's in double-digit production or fantasy point production. I mean, I think he's like 5 or 6. He's a defensive end 1 right now. But, you know, you also have to remember that we've got guys like Daniil Hunter and some of these other guys that they're not playing this year for the most part. So it's kind of been such a weird year for defensive end that Okwara doesn't surprise me. But if you guys are trying to get him for the long haul, I wouldn't do it. Like, if you're looking for a 1-year rental guy to push for the playoffs and get into the championship, like, perfectly fine. Spend a pick, you know, throw a third at a guy for him or something and get him. But long term, I just don't see it because he's never done it before. I mean, before this season, he wasn't somebody people were touching. So, again, the Craig Reith school. I'm not a Craig Reith, but I would tell you that you got to see it for longer than one season. So, yeah, for sure. And maybe even looking at the defensive end rankings. So I was looking at the defensive end kind of rankings pre-show and looking to see who's pointing. I mean, you know, Myles Garrett, Jason Pierre-Paul. Jason Pierre-Paul is number 2 behind Myles Garrett. That just doesn't, like, I didn't realize it was 2017 all over again. Brandon Graham, Emmanuel Ogbah. Now, I think Craig mentioned Ogbah preseason as a guy to keep an eye on in Miami. Might have been Paul. I could be giving him kudos when he doesn't deserve it.
Craig, that was him.
I'm about to say, I thought it was one of you two.
I missed on that one.
Stephon Tuitt, J.J. Watt, Brian Burns, DeMarcus Lawrence, Akeem Hicks, and then Trey Hendrickson from the Saints round out, you know, kind of the top 11, and even Aldon Smith is at 12. So it's an interesting year when you're looking at kind of what's going on for defensive ends. But a lot of these guys, I think, are going to kind of go back to being pumpkins after this season. I would not be, you know, getting super excited about any of these names that aren't, you know, because remember, Bosa's on IR and Hunter's out for the year. I mean, guys who you would expect to be up here are not playing. But we are even seeing Max Crosby finally come to life, so that's a nice thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other Bosa's not up there either. Not on IR, but he might as well be.
Well, and he missed the last 2 games, and then I think he got hurt in that 3rd game back. But you know, the first 3 weeks of the season he was double-digit fantasy points, and after that he's been hurt off and on. It's like, ugh, you know, we're in like bizarre world. So what's your take on some of these guys, Craig? You know, Okwara, and feel free to even do a little parade for yourself with the Ogbah take. You know, whatever you want to do.
I had Agba on here. I mean, he started off slow, but from game like 4 on, he's just been doing great. Um, I had the other name I had in here for D line that was mentioned was Romeo. And I agree with you. I wouldn't go fall in love with a guy. You might want to end up falling on your dagger by the end of this season. So the other name, someone cheap, and Brad, we had a trade, and he's having a nice night tonight so far. And for some reason, I guess I didn't check my lineup and put him in. But Carlos Dunlap is probably free, and you might be able to find him on waivers too. He's found new life since he got to Seattle, and he's been playing well. For linebackers, guys that we probably didn't talk about at all preseason, but AJ Klein in relief of Matt Milano has been doing great. Eric Wilson is not the Eric we probably thought would be the leading linebacker in Minnesota, and doesn't have the same name value as Eric Kendricks. But Wilson's having a great year. Kwiatkowski might be a guy you can find on waivers again because he hadn't been doing much at all, and he started to turn it on here. I think he's finally healthy too because he had been injured. And then I mentioned earlier, but Hassan Reddick, since Chandler Jones went out, he's been on a tear. But he's not high up in those rankings when you look and stuff, so you might be able to find him somewhere and get him cheap. But, you really have to go digging and know what you're looking for and what situations to look in to find some of these guys that are going to help you because, even more so than on the offensive side, I'd say with the number of injuries and the big name injuries and just weird stuff this year, you're going to have to find guys, even, cornerbacks, a number of cornerbacks that are up in the top of the defensive back list this year is just crazy. And you're finding guys, I think it's DJ Reed. He's starting for Seattle tonight. He's had, 3 tackles or something so far. So you can even find week to week cornerback that you're going to be all right starting, given how some of these safety situations are playing out.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as they don't get cut. I mean, the number one corner, Desir, not in the NFL anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's why you don't pay for him. That's why you find them on the waivers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I tend to look at the scrap heap for corners, and and I picked up Malcolm Butler a couple weeks back, and I've been playing him because he's still producing. It's like, didn't see that happening, but wouldn't be the first time that a guy left New England and was successful.
Well, and every once in a while you can pick one up and keep him. I mean, I think in Paul and I's main league, he still has Hilton, I think, that he got last year. And, I think he got hurt or had COVID or something the past week where he didn't play, but he was way up there too in terms of defensive backs, just killing it. And if you're in a cornerback required league and you can find a guy like that, I mean, that's striking gold.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. Yeah. And, and some of these guys, like Eric Wilson is a guy I think I think you can keep him for a couple seasons. The way Minnesota's going to have to rebuild and they have holes on both sides of the line, I think Wilson's a guy that you could stash and keep on your roster this year and probably for the next couple. He's only 26. He's been in the league for a couple of years, but it seems like he finally found the right fit with the Vikings. But outside of that, a lot of the names that we're bringing up are guys that, are not going to be guys that you're going to want to keep long term. Like Spillane from Pittsburgh. He might not even be worth keeping for much longer because of Avery Williamson there. Obviously, he was filling in for an injured Devin Bush, so we knew that next year he would go back to being a pumpkin. I mean, so a lot of the names you're hearing us mention tonight, be careful on them. They may be guys you could pick up for this year if you need them, but don't go crazy. Like AJ Klein, another guy that I don't know that he really works himself into a role just because he's producing for fantasy this year at this level. Matt Milano is a really good linebacker, and he plays well in that system. So,
yeah. But that's the sort of stuff you got to be finding. I mean, this year when you have Kerry Hyder as a top 15 defensive end, that's purely because of injuries and just that situation there. Leonard Williams is a guy that's always had the talent, and I mentioned preseason, and he's turned out to be playing really well. He's finally getting to the quarterback. Aldon Smith, no one saw it coming. He hasn't been great, but he's playing a lot and getting points. Jerry Hughes, another guy, been around forever, getting playing time here the past few weeks and doing well. So it's literally all over the board in terms of big names, no names, situational guys. So go out there, look for it. If you have questions, ask. I'll always help you out.
I'm surprised, guys. Brad, you're not going to pump your man up? defensive end 2 on the year?
No, I.
Michigan man.
Yeah, I thought about it. Michigan doesn't deserve to be pumped up right now, though. That's just a dumpster fire. So until Jim Harbaugh is let go, I am not pumping anybody from Michigan up. Although I will say, truth be told, Kwity Paye could be a first-round selection. There's some rookie fun for you. I've been watching a lot of scouting pundits talk about Michigan defensive end Kwity Paye, or defensive tackle, I guess, depends on how you look at him, going to someone like Dallas or one of these teams in the early first round.
You didn't realize that Brandon Graham's the second defensive.
Oh yeah, I
end,
know who
right?
you were talking about. Brandon Graham.
Okay.
See, the interesting thing about Brandon Graham is he always has these spurts where I feel like every other year he's like a really good D end, and then like this year I've got him in a couple spots, but I was like, I'm surprised you haven't retired yet because you're getting old, but he doesn't look like he's lost a step. With as crappy as Philly's looked, he's been, him, and I've even got a couple of Josh Sweat, whatever, however you say his last name. I've got a couple of shares of him because he had popped for a few weeks there. So, just the way that Philly defense plays, those defensive ends, they have their time to shine. But yeah, Brandon Graham, I've always liked Brandon Graham. I hate Michigan right now though, until they get rid of Harbaugh. So that's it. We're done. Unless you guys have anyone. Do you guys have anyone else? Yeah,
We hit everyone that was on my list, at least casually.
The only thing that I also mentioned is, when you're looking at these guys that you're probably going to be playing for a few weeks or rest of the season, take a look at who they're going to be playing. A guy like Brandon Graham, who, like Brad says, he didn't see this coming. If you look at who he's playing towards the end of this year, Arizona, Dallas, Washington, I mean, he has some really nice matchups. So it's the same thing with these guys that, if Steelers linebacker X goes out, take a look at see who they're playing, teams that are giving up points to these positions and stuff, because that can be the main difference when you get down to that week 16 or 17, whenever your season ends, 15. I've seen a couple leagues this year. So pay attention to the matchups, because in defense, I think that matters a lot more than your wide receiver du jour when you have a guy like Metcalf who, by and large, is matchup proof. Defense, when you're the only guy like Josh Allen, for example, yeah, he's been hurt, but you can kind of more or less get shut out by an offense if that's what they want to do.
For sure. And DK Metcalf's biggest problem is his face mask. I'm sure you weren't watching, Craig, but he had a touchdown. A touchdown bounce off his mask. It was pretty hilarious.
We're not doing a offensive show here,
not.
but he's got hands issues he's got to fix. So if you're a DK Metcalf owner, keep that in mind. Or if you're trying to buy him, throw that out there.
I would.
He has a really high drop rate. Go out there, and it's like 13, 1 out of 13 or something passes this year he's dropped.
Yeah, as a DK Metcalf owner, you could tell me that, and I would tell you to shut your mouth. Shut your dirty mouth. I'm still trotting him out on a weekly basis because he'll still get me some good production.
Yes, you should.
Since you mentioned him,
Yeah, so but that's it. We're done. Thank you guys for hanging out with us and checking it out. If you've watched and listened this long, good for you. Hopefully you've learned something and been entertained and had a joyous time hanging out with us. We will be back regularly here soon on a week-to-week basis during the season. We never know if we're actually going to be together or have time to get together, but we will kick these out as much as we can in season, and once we get to the off season, we will hit it. We will hit it hard. We will hit it from the back if you're a COD player. And go to the prison, whatever. But for Craig, for Paul, for everybody in the Roto 8 team, we thank you guys for hanging out with us. Like, subscribe, do all those things. We will see you in the gulag.
See ya.
Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to. Do it.